What was
It's been a few weeks since we got to talk, and boy, has a lot happened in the Canadian football landscape. Canada makes it to the semifinals of a Copa. The women's national team announces their roster for the Olympics. CPL MLS action as well. And don't forget, Canadian Championship back on tonight. We got a lot to get into, so let's do it. This is Footy First.
To be honest, it's hard to explain. They're the best team in the world.
That's right, folks. We are back. We are back, and we got a lot to get into. Nick McVicker, Niko Giantsopoulos. Niko, how you doing, brother?
Doing well. It's been a couple of weeks since I've spoken to you. We had the game on the Thursday. We normally film this show on Wednesday. So that means Wednesday was a travel day for me, so couldn't get into it. Then lots of traveling back and forth. Next week didn't really work. And here we're back on. I'm tired. I'm exhausted. We're in the middle of a heat wave here on the West Coast.
Oh, we are too. Don't worry. The East Coast ain't any colder, so.
Okay, well, it sucks here. At least you guys got AC. I think I spoke about this before, but there's no air conditioning.
I don't have AC.
Yeah.
I have lots of fans, man. It's hot.
Yeah,
it's gross.
I think this podcast needs a sponsorship from Canadian Tire because they're about to steal all my money because I'm walking over there after this and buying some air conditioning units. So crazy, but good to be back.
Good to be back for sure. And man, there's a lot that's happened. We got the Canadian Championships about to get back underway for the semifinals tonight. We got MLS CPL teams. The MLS teams are not doing very well. The three Canadian teams still can't get a win. We couldn't get a win when two teams played against each other. That's how bad it's going right now. We couldn't even get a win when two of them were playing each other. And we also had the women's national team announce their roster for the upcoming Olympics, which is very exciting. But Niko, we got to start with the biggest story, and that is Canadian men's national team making it all the way to the semis of Copa America. End up losing 2-0 to Argentina in that semifinal, but what a run they've been on. Alvarez and Messi with the 2 goals. But I want to say the effort from Canada was good in the match. 90 minutes, they didn't really give up at any point. The performance, we can have a different conversation about that because I don't think it was the best performance Canada had in this tournament. I don't think it's the best performance they've had under Jesse Marsh. And I think we talked about this before. Can we still have the moral victories while still wanting to talk about performance of this side? And I think the answer to that question is yes. We can still have moral victories while still being critical of the performance of this team. Because it's the moment yesterday was massive. We got to a major continental tournament semi-final. Everyone wants to rip on the Gold Cup as much as we can because it's the competition level's not the same. This isn't the Gold Cup. This was the Copa America. We played a semi-final against the number 1 team in the world. Obviously, there is a huge moral victory just getting to that point. But the performance in that match did not live up to what I expect now from this team. What about you?
Yeah, I also just want to point out that this game leading into the semifinals was the biggest Canadian sports story going on, not just the biggest soccer story. It was the biggest Canadian sports story going on, and that's just a huge moment, such a huge moment for the sport in this country that it finally got the spotlight that it deserved. Millions of people. Do you know what the number of viewership was that was watching it? I believe an average of 2.3 million, but I believe figures around 6 million people watched the game. It sucked that people that maybe were watching soccer for the first time, probably since the World Cup. I wish they got a goal to cheer about, something to kind of get excited for, because that would have done a lot for the game in this country, but definitely a moral victory. We got to the semifinals of the Copa America. The best teams on the Western Hemisphere played in this tournament because you still had US, Mexico, and Canada coming from the CONCACAF regions, Jamaica as well. So yeah, moral victories you can take from it. Some players really stepped up. This was the most exciting times for the men's national team since we qualified for the World Cup. And from the World Cup onwards, it's kind of really been a bit bland, I would say, leading up to
Yeah.
this. And then finally, this brought the spirit back that this group of players has had around them since, the John Herdman time. And again, it's brought the positive feeling back towards this group because I felt like for a little bit it did kind of dwindle. Would you agree in saying that?
It did. Yeah, it did 100%.
So again, it's lifted the spirits of Canada soccer fans. I think there's a belief now that we can go in and compete against these giants. Some great experience has been learned from this tournament. And in saying that, hopefully, when our next big stage opportunity comes in 2026, which is the World Cup, we can again take another step forward because I think this tournament, we've taken another step forward. Hopefully, we could take another one in the World Cup and turn some heads. But yeah, you could definitely take some moral victories. But then when you really start analyzing the game and you look at Argentina versus Canada, we were outclassed all over the park. You could just really see the differences of the sides. And you can see the work that needs to be done to get to where these nations are. Not necessarily Argentina, who is the best in the world, but the Dutch, the England, the Germany, the Spains,
France.
Brazil's. We're now trying to get in that upper tier where I still feel like we are not there. We're there with the Venezuelas.
Yeah. And you know what? I put it this way to somebody who I was talking to who actually wasn't a huge footy fan, but was really enjoying the tournament. And
Awesome.
the way I put this was Canada is a good team in the international stage who is trying to become a great team, right? Same with the Venezuela, same with the Chile, right? These are good teams. They have very talented players, right? They're just not at that great level yet. Canada is learning to be great or wanting to try to learn how to be great. They're not there yet. And that's the difference between the Argentinas, the Frances, the Englands, the Brazils, as you mentioned. Those teams are great teams. I would even argue the U.S. and Mexico are now in that good stage, mostly because the Mexicans are on that youth movement and the U.S. just can't seem to find it when it comes to big tournaments. They don't know how to be great. They do not know how to play in those big moments. Canada is now in that group, as opposed to being in the group below that where we could be good, depending on the day. Now we seem to be good a lot. And that's the way I described it. And the person who I was talking to was like, that makes so much sense. And I think it's a good example of what this team really is. They're good. They're a very good team. They're just not great yet.
Yeah, and hopefully this tournament can propel some of the players on that roster to get bigger moves because that really is how the team is going to make the next step. If we could get more players in bigger clubs, just gaining more and more experience and just improving their craft at higher levels. You're already hearing stories of Derek Cornelius potentially getting moves, Bombito getting moves. I'm sure there's stuff that hasn't even reached the media yet as the transfer window is opening next week. But that's how this growth continues. I think Jesse Marsh has done a great job welcoming himself to not only the player pool, but Canada soccer fans.
Absolutely.
He definitely gained some trust, which I don't think he needed to do because I think the hiring, there was so much optimism around it. But it's always good to see it be validated in the play of the national team. So kudos to him. And I also, and I'm curious to get your point on this, Nick, as well. I wonder, besides the basic structure that he laid and maybe the basic tactics that he put the team through this tournament, I still don't really think he or any manager is really able to put their fingerprint on a team with being, in charge of them for only 6 weeks. I think he learned a lot about the Canadian men's national team. And I think future camps, you're going to see really what Jesse Marsh is going to be able to do with this group. But I don't think he had as big of a play in the success of this team as people may think. It's more so a lot of the credit needs to go to the players. I think they're very adaptable in taking on whatever he brought to the group, but the players did the job on the pitch. We knew we had good players on this roster, but I think they just showed that we have the caliber of players that can compete with some of the top countries in the world. But I don't think necessarily Jesse Marsh can get a lot of credit because I just don't think a manager can do that much with just 6 weeks of having a hold of this roster.
I agree with you on that. I think it's hard to really implement something in just 6 weeks. I do think he put a new tactic in that Canada didn't use under Herdman, and that was the high press, running for 90 minute style that they played. Which, again, as you said, you got to give the players a ton of credit to adapt to that, what was asked of them from the manager. I think what we've seen over I guess this is now that was the 7th match under Marsh, I believe. Is that right? Two pre-tournament.
5 in the Copa and then
Yeah.
2 exhibitions.
What we've seen is he is learning about his players and how to utilize them, I think. Who needs to go in when, how it's kind of going to use. It's 7 matches, though. He hasn't had a ton of time with these guys. There is still a lot for him to learn about this group of 26 players, let alone the entire player pool that he has now at his disposal, right? And I know we had 2 more that were in camp that didn't make it to the Copa, 1 more who was invited but didn't come. That's only 29 out of the entire pool that he has had conversations with about this tournament. There may have been more, but let's say 29. He still has a lot to learn about this player pool, and it's going to come. He's going to have more time now. He's going to get these international friendlies that we have on the books for the rest of this year and next year. He'll have the opportunity, and that's when we're going to really see Jesse Marsh's stamp on this side. But for this tournament, yeah, you're right. You got to give a ton of credit to the players themselves who were able to go out, implement a tactic that they weren't using prior, and have success. Like, how many people going into this tournament expected Canada to get to the semi? I would say if you talk to most people, getting out of the group would have been a success. We didn't just do that. We got to the semi. We are in the 3rd place game, which has a huge impact. We're going to play a top team. Colombia and Uruguay are no slouches. These are very, very good sides. We get more game experience against top teams. That is what Canada needs to take away from this match, because in the end, that's what really can be taken from this. And I think Eustachio was asked about what he thought about the match. Niko, I'm going to play this clip quickly and we can discuss it. He was asked about what he thought about the match, and this is what he had to say.
To be honest, it's hard to explain. They're the best team in the world, but at the same time, we had our chances in the beginning of the game. If we scored one of our chances, we probably, the story of the game would have been different. And they have one chance, they score, and everything starts to open up. And we needed fresh legs as well. But at the same time, I'm proud of the boys. To be honest, to get here, a top 4 team of Copa America is a very good achievement. We still have 1 game to go, and we're going to push for 3rd place.
We still have 1 game to go, and we're going to push for 3rd place. This is not a team that is just going into that 3rd place game and expecting to lose. They are pushing for 3rd place. That tells you a lot about where this team thinks they are. They're proud of what they've done, but they want more, right? And that's the key, right? That's what we've wanted from Canada for so long. We've had 1 tournament victory. 1. And that was the 2000 Gold Cup, which, again, no one expected us to win. We've been to 2 World Cups, one that we kind of snuck into and the other one that we dominated qualifying, which was the last one, obviously. We want more from this, and this is the kind of mentality I think most fans have wanted from this team for so long, and now we're seeing it, Niko.
Yeah, I mean, there's not really much I need to add to that. He's right, and you're right in saying that Canada has longed for a team that is not, it's not laughable when they say stuff like that.
They're not
And
just
before,
happy to be there.
yeah, exactly. But I'm sure back then the right thing PR wise would to say it's something like that, but then people would kind of scoff at it.
Yeah.
Now Stachio saying it, there's a belief in the group, and we're not calling him an idiot or crazy. So it's good times for Canada soccer, and yeah, fucking right. We should be. The upward trajectory of Canada soccer is upwards. I would actually argue, I don't know which nation has had the biggest change, upwards, like Canada soccer has in the last decade.
It's a great question. Maybe Morocco.
Yeah,
They've had a pretty big jump. But yeah, no, it's a great question, Niko.
maybe even, I mean, Georgia's impressed a lot of people in this Euros as well,
Absolutely.
but we're definitely one of the few nations which has made the biggest growth. And is that because the CPL, we just got a domestic league 5 years ago? Is that because more investment and just the game and the raw numbers of participants playing the sport in the country has also statistically grown? I'm sure plenty of factors go into it, but yeah, we're coming.
And even Eustachio made a comment about that after, about what still needs to be done to get to that next level. And here's that comment right here.
I think it's very important for the people back home to understand that it's possible to be here more times. We have the team for it. I just wish the CPL starts pushing more so we can grow more Canadian players that can support us going on. 2026 is just around the corner, but we still need more Canadians to come around and be better. If everybody's professional, we can have better teams in the future. That's what I hope.
Oh, hey, you get a little shout out as the CPL, because he's right. If we can keep growing that, if the CPL market keeps growing, well, this becomes a very different Canadian team. More players in the pool, more talent in the pool. This team becomes even better, and we're seeing it in the CPL growth. We had, I think, 2 CPL alumni technically in the camp. One made it to the tournament, correct?
Yeah, if you're talking about Joel Waterman and Dominic Zator.
Yeah, well, so they were both in the camp. Waterman making it to the actual tournament. And guys coming from League One, even like Alistair Johnston played in League One not too long ago. Like, the growth is so big, and it's so important to have that domestic level of footy to allow these guys an opportunity. And that's what we're seeing. We're seeing guys get more opportunities. And it's great to see, because this is the most talented Canadian side I've ever watched. I know I'm not one of the old heads. I didn't get to watch the 86 team, but this is the most talented Canadian side I've ever watched. And if you ask a lot of people, that's the case. They are the most talented side. What do you think they kind of need to maybe take that next step, maybe player-wise, maybe a specific skill set that needs to be improved a little bit? I want to get your opinion as a player, Niko, because I have an answer, but I want to get your opinion first.
But what's the direct question? What do they need
to take that next step to get to be pushing for these semifinals and finals consistently, not just a one-off like this?
International tournaments? So you're talking about the Copas and the World Cup. That's almost like it might be harsh to say, it's almost like a generation away for us to start making that step. So what needs to happen is exactly what has been happening for us to even make this step in the last 10 years. So the game needs to continue to be invested in. The domestic leagues needs to continue to grow, i.e. CPL, and players need to continue to develop and get in better systems. That's honestly the base. Is it going to be able to happen like that? No, I think that for us to make that next step, because we're just like we just spoke now, we're kind of just entering this new level. of Canada soccer, it's going to take another 15 years for us to start believing that we could be a top 10, top 15 nation in the world. Um, yeah, it's a difficult question. Unless you have a better, what's your thoughts on it? I can't really think of anything exact besides that. Time and continuing to invest in the game.
Yeah, and that's 100% what it is. It's the investment in the game, and that's what we've seen over the last 10 years. We actually need even more investment into the game, if that makes sense, because I think you and me can both attest the youth system in Canada is still not at the level that it needs to be at if we want to compete with the top club, or the top countries, I should say. There needs to be more so that we can still cultivate those young athletes. And I was having a conversation earlier today as well, and that's one thing that I think people don't really understand is like, oh, well, now we're there, like we're gonna just be spitting out talent. No, that's not how it works. Like, you could be very lucky and just have a generation where all of the top guys from your country happen to stay and play for your country, right? Like, that could be what's happening in Georgia right now. We don't know, but I'm just using that as an example. It happens. People have a once in a generation team and they go out and compete well. For us to continue this and to get from we're ranked 48th in FIFA heading into the tournament, that will obviously probably go up with being in the semifinals. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm fairly confident that will go up and we'll probably get closer to 40, maybe even crack the top 40. If we want to get from the 40s to the 20s or the teens, we need to keep building on that. We need to keep investing and put more money in to creating the proper youth system that we currently do not have in Canada. And there's lots of questions that we can ask about that, but that needs to be something that needs to be talked about. And by doing that, maybe we will be able to find and cultivate the talented youth that we have in this country, because there is talent across the country. There is. You go to any field that is playing a U10 match, you are going to most likely find a kid who's pretty talented. It's whether you can take that and turn it into somebody who can still play at the top level when they're 18, 19, 20. That's the difference. And that's what we're missing to go to that next level, in my opinion. And it comes down to investment, and it comes down to the system. And I think if we can get that system right, then we can expect these kinds of results, getting out of the group, winning a knockout stage. Once you do that, if you are doing that consistently, you are in the 10 to 20 range of teams. If you want to get to that top 10 and you want to be in semifinals and finals consistently, you need to do that and then some. That's the difference that some of these countries have over us right now.
Yeah, we're still such a young footballing nation as well. We're so behind from the Englands, the Hollands, the France. Soccer has been the biggest sport over there for decades, and we are now just kind of discovering international soccer.
Yep.
Now. So there's a lot of work to do. I agree with you. I think the system needs to. It's not perfect yet. It's done a good job, like I said, because we are at this moment now where we are. We're not some pushovers, so it has had success. And I don't believe that we need to copy what other countries have done, because every country has the reasons why those systems work there. But we do need to find a hybrid that works best for us, and maybe look at other countries that have similar difficulties. I think the U.S., it's a huge sporting nation with lots of competition for luring athletes, and also Australia, the other side of the world, but it's the same kind of nation. Australia's kind of been stuck at where Canada is now. They qualify for the World Cups, but they're not normally really making noise in the tournaments. But they got a good youth system in place, and they're consistently producing international talent players that are having success both abroad and domestic. So you're right when it comes to that. They just got a Canada soccer, and I think we're heading in the right direction. but that's how we're going to be able to make that next step, like you asked.
I agree. I want to ask who impressed you the most in the tournament from a Canadian standpoint?
I
I
did
figured
have.
I knew you were
I
going to
was
have that.
going to
So
ask you the same thing. Whose stock do you think rose, and whose stock maybe dropped the most? For me, I think the player that stock rose the most was Jacob Schaffelberg.
it has to be.
It's so odd because going into this tournament, Jacob Schaffelberg wasn't like, oh, he's always getting called into a camp. He was kind of like a fringe national team player.
Yeah.
And, the Halifax poster boy now seems like it's one of Jesse Marsh's favorite player. He got an opportunity through the injury of Tajon Buchanan, but in sports, sometimes that's how it goes. He
But
took
hold on,
advantage.
did he get an opportunity through the injury to Tajon, or did he get an opportunity because he outplayed Liam Miller? Because I think he was starting when Buchanan was starting as well in that second match. And I'm not saying Liam Miller necessarily played poorly, but I think Schaffelberg just showed Jesse Marsh what he could do, and Marsh just gave him the opportunity to start. I think it was more that in my defense. I just don't want to put it all on Tajon's injury. I think Jacob earned it.
You're right. He did earn it. I think it made Jesse's decision a bit easier, and you
Yes.
never know going into a semifinal game like that. Do you just go with the guys that you may feel have a bit more experience? Who knows? But Schaffelberg, since the tournament began, and even those two international friendlies, basically since Jesse Marsh has taken over, I think he's done a great job at earning his spot. So his stock for me has impressed. Also, Maxime Crépeau, you can't go without talking about him.
Yep.
Canada's best player in the tournament. I think that's a fair statement to say.
Yep.
Going into the tournament, Jesse wasn't sure who the starting goalie was. I think now at the end of this tournament, he knows who his guy is, and it's Maxime Crépeau. He was outstanding. I mean, stock as well, who's rose. You got to think it's tough because of his current situation going on with Portland Timbers and his contract. And it's going to be probably difficult for him to get a move to a bigger club or in a bigger league, just because they're going to have to spend probably a bit of money, and who knows if a club wants to do that right now. But his stock is definitely rose. So those are the two players for me that did stick out. What about you?
Yeah, those were my top two for sure. I think they're the obvious answers. They both really did impress. A couple other names.
Let me ask you a difficult one. Whose stock then do you think dropped?
Okay, can I do a couple? There's two other guys that I had on my list that rose, but those were my top two. I was also very impressed with Moises Bombito. I know he made the mistake and looked the wrong way on that first goal yesterday, but I thought he played very, very well throughout the tournament. I think he has a very bright future with this national team, and he's getting looks over in Europe because of that. I thought he was very impressive. Cornelius as well, but he's been playing in Europe, so I was more impressed with Bombito because I didn't expect him necessarily to play as well as he did, and he played really well. Another guy, ironically, was the guy who came off the bench in pretty much every match, and that's Aluasei, who, by the way, has one of the hardest names to say in Canadian sports. He really impressed me. A guy with a huge motor, really big, really good energy, comes off the bench and just runs. I'm shocked he hasn't scored a goal in this tournament because he's put himself in really good spots. I think I said this on a different show that Kyle Larin needs one goal to break the well open, and he's going to have a lot of success with Canada again. Tawny could be the same thing. I think if he gets one goal, if he gets one opportunity and he can crack that goal, he could make a huge impact for this team. We're already seeing it for his club team with Minnesota United. I wouldn't be shocked if he continues this play at Minnesota, if he gets a look in the January transfer window over to Europe to maybe a championship side or that kind of level to take that next step in his career. He has really impressed me, and those two guys, Bombito and Aluasei, were very impressive in my opinion. In limited time for one of them, but I was very impressed with those two.
One shot, one opportunity. I thought you were about to bust out an Eminem further, but no, I agree. It's always an encouraging sign for strikers when they're, and I gotta figure out how to say this properly, when they're getting those chances.
Mm-hmm.
Same sense, it's also super disappointing when they're not converting those chances. But I'd be more worried if my striker isn't getting those chances as opposed to, not putting them away. So definitely encouraging signs, and he did bring good energy off the bench.
Yeah, and I mean, I'll hark it back to Brian Wright in the CPL, who always puts himself in good spots. All it took was one this year, and now the guy's leading the league in goals, right? Like when you have a good striker and they can get that first one under their belt, it changes the entire complexion of their season. And I think that's the way it's going to be for both Tawny and Kyle moving forward for this national team.
Yeah, I agree. So again, let me pose the question to you. Whose stock dropped?
Whose stock dropped? I don't know if anyone's stock dropped who really played. Maybe Kamal Miller's stock dropped a little bit because he lost his starting spot for this national program. Marsh seems to really like Cornelius on Bombito, but I mean, Miller was the one guy who came off the bench to replace one of them. You know what I mean? So did his stock really drop that much? I know if you're asking fans, the answer is Jonathan David, because people were very disappointed with him not playing up to his potential so far. I know he got the one goal for Canada, but people have been very disappointed with how he's played. I don't know if I buy it necessarily, but I think questions now arise like which of the three guys, if you're going to put Tawny in there, who's going to be sitting moving forward, right? And unfortunately, it's probably going to be Kyle based on the way Marsh seems to be going. But Kyle stayed in and played the full 90 against Argentina yesterday, right? Like he decided to pull David instead of Kyle because, in my opinion, Kyle was playing the better game.
Yeah, I think between Jonathan David and Kyle Larin, if Jonathan David isn't scoring, then I think Kyle Larin does more for the team.
I actually agree with you. So go continue. I want to hear the rest of your thought.
Oh, it's not overly complicated. That's what I think. If Jonathan David isn't scoring, then I think Kyle Larin does more for the team, both defensively and even combining at the top. Jonathan David, though, I still think notoriously is a better finisher and a better goal scorer than Kyle Larin. But again, if he's not scoring like we saw this tournament, then sometimes Kyle Larin will do more for the team.
Yeah, I agree with you, actually. And I think we kind of saw it yesterday in the Argentina match. I know I'm using it as a one-game capsule, but ball played into Kyle Larin, he was making little one-touch passes, and I mean, not all of them came off, but at least he was being creative. It almost looked like David had a heavy touch on everything that came to his feet. It just was weird. And I know that's not the norm. He's not going to do that every game, but Kyle, I think, offers more in a defensive standpoint and with those connecting passes up top as a true number 9 that I don't think David has in his bag as of right now. Could he get it? Absolutely. But as of right now, I think you're right. Kyle offers more when it comes to the current state of this team. And I think if you put Aluasei kind of in that 10 role in behind Kyle with working his back off like crazy, running up and down and making runs in behind off of those one-touch passes, maybe they could get some chemistry going, and who knows? But the question does come up, do you have Kyle and Jonathan up there, or is it now Tawny's time to maybe get a run with one of them or rotate between both of them? And then I think that leads into the question, does Marsh rotate the squad for this third place game?
And yeah, that'll be the biggest question going into it. And it'll all be up to Jesse.
What do you think?
Marsh. I think he should play who he believes is his best lineup.
Okay. That's fair.
If he now believes it's with a different striker or a different midfield pairing or a different center back pairing, but whoever he thinks is best, I think use international friendlies to toy around with thing. If anything, you could use subs, but again, I think when it comes to the starting 11, let's we've made a lot of noise in this tournament. Let's not let this loss in the semifinals then be okay. Now it's just like a practice game. We're playing Colombia or Uruguay. These are, like you said, teams. Let's see how we compete. It's almost safe to rotate the squad So there's less pressure. Again, let's go into this another game and see what comes out of it.
And I don't think these guys are going to want less pressure. I think they're going to want every minute. If they can play, they're going to be out there and pushing for all 90. There has been talk about people wanting Davies to move up into that attacking position again. I've actually really enjoyed watching him play left back.
He's one of the best left backs in the world.
He's one of the best left backs in the world. And with Schaffelberg on that side, you have so much speed. One thing I could see maybe happening, because Ali Ahmed looked really good yesterday when he came on the pitch. I thought he really sent in a lot of energy. One thing we could see is maybe they move Schaffelberg to the right side and you put Ahmed in front of Davies so that Davies doesn't feel as pressured to necessarily come back, because Ahmed has that left back kind of mentality as well. He can drop in and cover Davies. Maybe that opens Davies up a little bit more. I'm not saying it's going to happen tomorrow, but that's an option that I'm sure Jesse Marsh and the coaching staff is going to talk about.
Davies is out.
If he plays.
I think it's a guarantee he's not playing, so that'll be the biggest opportunity for some player to pop into that lineup. How Jesse Marsh decides to go with that, I don't know. Who's like the backup left back on the national team? Off the top of my head, I can't think.
Sam Adekugbe, who's not there.
Larea?
It's either Larea or it's Ahmed.
Yeah, so I can almost guarantee that Alphonso Davies is not going to play.
He said he wants to.
I'm sure he wants to, but...
Well, everything came back fine last night after the game. They sent him for x-rays, which I think it was more precautionary than anything else. I agree with you. If he's not 100%, you don't play him, but...
I don't think Bayern lets him play. For a nothing game, this ain't a finals. It's now a bronze medal game. I know we're just saying here that it's something, but to Bayern,
to Bayern, it's a nothing game. To Canada soccer, it's an important game. So it depends on perspective, I guess.
Exactly. So I would almost guarantee a Niko Giants that Davies won't be playing. So there will be an opportunity for one player to come in. Going back to who stock dropped and who, for me, didn't really impress me as much, and he was given plenty of opportunity in this tournament, was Liam Miller.
Yeah. I didn't have a high stock of him to begin with. I think that's why I didn't include him in my list. But I get what you're saying.
Yeah, he got plenty of playing time.
He did. And he was given opportunities, and he showed flashes. But it was, the decision-making was poor. And I mean, his speed is great, but you have to be able to make decisions at that speed if you're going to be playing, and he just wasn't able to. So yeah, I agree with you.
Going back to the Argentina game quickly, because I did at this point, but we just kind of went down. Going into the big games that Canada's going to play in the future, for us to have success, our superstars need to be our best players on the field. When I think of who are Canada's superstars now, I think it's Maxime Crépeau, I think it's Alphonso Davies, and I think it's Stefan Eustáquio. That's who I right now, and Jonathan David up top. Those are my four superstars for Canada. Those four guys in the Argentina game didn't meet the expectations. I think if you ask them, they would say the same thing of their performances. Quickly, the goal that went in, the first goal, Maxime, he would want that back. Is it a bad goal?
100%.
No. But he would want to make that save. And in that first game that we saw against Argentina, those were the saves that he was making.
Absolutely.
Alphonso Davies, for me, was playing a bit too individualized in that game. He had a chance where he was outside of the box. It was probably Canada's best attacking moment in the first half, maybe the 25th minute. They were circulating the ball. There was pressure. They had Argentina pinned back. Alphonso Davies gets on the ball, takes on a man, and really forces a shot that didn't need to be taken. It was blocked, and he kind of then went down, laid down on the ground, hummed and hawed, and Argentina went on a counterattack. For me, that's not leadership. That's not what I want out of my captain. That's a selfish play and then just sits on the ground and doesn't work back for the team. Stefan Eustáquio wasn't really going forward as much and wasn't connecting as his pass. It wasn't as clean and as sharp. And Jonathan David just was not clinical, as we talked about. So moving forward, if Canada wants to have success, and I guess that could even go back to our original question is, how does Canada take that next step? Is our superstars need to show up in the biggest moments.
Yes.
And I think when you think of the World Cup, our superstars was Milan Borjan, one of our most experienced players in the World Cup. He did
fell
not play
apart.
well.
He fell apart.
So again, another opportunity where Canada just didn't make that step. That's how we're going to also make that step, along with the investment and the system. But it also, just like we're giving players a lot of credit, they need to take a lot of the responsibility for taking that next step forward.
Okay,
Sorry for the
No, I love it. And I'm going to add one more comment to it before we move on. How long until Kone is one of those players in your mind?
very soon. I think him and Eustáquio are building a great relationship in the midfield. They're very, the Wu-Tang of each other. And I think they build a great partnership. And he's having great success at the club level. Like we said, that is going to be a key for his growth.
Now he's going to France too, so new opportunity for him.
Yes, exactly. He's young, but he's playing like a man the more and more I see him. I think he's getting more comfortable in that Canada shirt, which is a factor.
100%. And I think you're right. He is the yin to Eustáquio's yang, not Wu Tang, but whatever. I agree, and I also think we have to give a little credit to Osorio in that midfield as well. I thought he was a very calming presence during this tournament when he was in the matches. If he's now the third behind Kone and Eustáquio, that's a pretty good midfield, especially when we're playing most of our games in CONCACAF. That's probably the best midfield in CONCACAF right now. That's my opinion. But anyways, speaking of a pretty good midfield in CONCACAF, but we're going to flip over to the women's side now. Canadian women's team is announced for the Olympic roster, 18-player squad plus some reserves. Niko, I'm going to read them out quickly, and then we will discuss. Your goalkeepers are Sabrina D'Angelo and Kaylin Sheridan. Your defenders, Kadisha Buchanan, Sydney Collins, Vanessa Gilles, Ashley Lawrence, Jade Riviere, Jade Rose, midfielders Simi Awujo, Jessie Fleming, Julia Grosso, and Quinn, and your forwards Janine Becky, Jordan Heidema, Chloe Lacasse, Adriana Leon, Nichelle Prince, Evelyn Vian. There are 4 alternates as well: Gabrielle Carl, Lucienne Prue, Deanne Rose, and Shelina Zadorsky. Any name on that list surprise you, whether it's on the list or not on the list?
Surprised me, Shelina Zadorsky as a alternative. What's the word that you used?
Alternate.
Alternate. That was the biggest surprise for me. I mean, she's had so much experience in the women's national team. I feel like even the last couple of years, she's performed really well when I've watched the women's team play.
Even at club level, she's performed very well.
Is she still at Tottenham?
Yes.
Yeah. So, yeah, that was the biggest one for me. The goalkeepers, mainstays. Yeah, nothing popped out. Yourself?
Well, along the lines of Zadorsky is Gabrielle Carl, who's had a fantastic season as well. She's been great, played well for Canada. And the inclusion of Sydney Collins as a main player and not an alternate kind of surprised me, only because she just hasn't played matches. I know she's talented as a defender, but it's hard to say that she deserved a spot over the players that we just mentioned, Zadorsky and Carl, who, when she's literally played like 5 matches in the last 12 months due to injury, right? Like, it's a question. And she's young, so maybe I understand that she's been playing really well in training. That's what Bev Priestman keeps saying, but training versus game is 2 very different things, as we all know. Like, you could be the best player in training, but you might not have the ability to keep up in a game. It's a different speed. So that's my only concern. But I know she's talented, so I'm not like overly concerned. It's just that's the one question that I had.
The name who didn't make either the main team or the alternates was Desiree Scott. I think she's been a big name for the women's national team for a long time. She's almost part of the older heads group, like Steph LeBay, Christine St. Clair. I could go on, but that kind of group of players.
Yep.
She didn't get called in. I think she's had a fantastic career. She's battled extremely hard from coming back from an ACL tear, which is never difficult. So credit to her. I know she definitely wanted to make this Olympic roster, but failed to do so. But I think and it doesn't really have to do with the Olympics, but I think Desiree Scott is going to be a player that is going to come back to the Northern Super League and be one of these. How are they taglining the players that come back? Franchise players? What is it?
I haven't heard the official title, whether they're going to be
What are
designated
you
or
calling it?
franchise. They're designated Canadian.
DPs?
DCs, designated Canadian.
DCs, yeah, DPs, DCs. I think she'll be a Northern Super League player soon, and I think she'll just be a mainstay for women's soccer in this country because she
Yeah.
deserved it, done all the groundwork. So she may not get the glory with this Olympic team, but she was a part of the previous Olympic teams, and now she'll be laying the foundation for the domestic league and just going to be a great ambassador for the sport.
Yeah, that's a great shout. I agree with you 100%. The other name that wasn't on either list that I was a little bit surprised was Olivia Smith. She's had a fantastic year, big transfer now over to Europe as well. But not on the list. I think that's more just to do with age and experience. But then, I mean, Sydney Collins is included. So what am I saying? Age and experience is about the same.
Those are questions for Bev.
Exactly. So we can't answer that question. I think now the only question is, what are realistic expectations for this side heading into the Olympics, and could we defend the title? Because we are the defending title holders.
Yes, we can. I think there's a lot of pressure on this team, especially with the movement of women's sport, women's soccer right now in the country. I think the expectations need to be top three. Can we defend? Yes. But the
Yep.
goal has to be to get a bronze. You need to come back with a medal, I believe. And we're good enough. The roster is good enough. We have players playing in good enough leagues. They are miles ahead of where the men is on the global scale. So just like we want the men getting to the point where they're in the semifinals and finals of these tournaments, the women are at that.
They're already
Are at
there.
that
They're already doing that.
And we don't want them taking a step down from that pedestal. We want them staying there. So that's the challenge that this women's team has. The men's challenge is getting there. The women's challenge, which is even sometimes more difficult, because when you're at the top, you have a target on your back, it's staying there. Sometimes staying there is much harder than getting there.
Agreed, 100%. And I think you're right. The expectation should be to get to that semifinal, get to the final. It's going to be tough. I think this is a young side. A lot of people maybe making their first Olympic or really just kind of young with the squad. So I wouldn't be shocked if they don't get there, but the expectation should be to get there. So I agree with you 100% there, Niko. Let's move on to another championship because it seems to be all we're talking about right now. Oh, did you have something else you wanted to add? Sorry.
Oh, keep segueing us into this topic, and then I'll shout out what I just saw.
Perfect. Okay. Canadian Championship semifinals are starting today. Forge currently taking on Toronto as we speak, I believe. Is that correct? The game
They're
started
up
at 7.
1-0.
Forge is up 1-0. Well, that kind of leads to my question. Can Forge continue to upset MLS sides and make a run to the finals here, Niko?
Yes, I mean, as we're seeing how the MLS is going for the Canadian clubs, Montreal seems like the most informed team. You asked us that a month ago, and we'd call you crazy, but TFC has had a terrible run in form. I think they need their captain back in that locker room to.
I think they need a lot back in that locker room,
But Forge is up 1-0 right now. It's only 13 minutes in, so it is early. So yeah, I think they can. It's a bit cheating saying that now because I know the score and they're up early, but fucking hell, this is no better time for a CPL club to take advantage of a MLS side. And like I said a couple shows ago, we might witness an all CPL Canadian Championship final.
yeah,
Crazy.
and to think about that a few weeks ago would have kind of been crazy. If we go back a month and a half when Vancouver was flying high, when TFC looked like they were kind of figuring things out with the Italian duo kind of playing well, got some good defending. Now all of a sudden, these teams are struggling. As I said off the top of the show, 3 Canadian teams in action this past weekend. Not a single one won, and 2 of them played against each other. Like we're not getting results for the most part. Montreal, who gave away a lot of their top talent over the last year and a half, when transfers, I mean, not literally gave them away, but you know what I mean. They seem to be playing the best right now, and that's a scary thought considering TFC have the talent that they do, and Vancouver was at one point one of the top teams in the MLS. Right now, they're both struggling, and Forge is one of those CPL teams who you give them an inch, they're going to take a mile. And right now, as you said, up 1-0 against TFC. By the way, I'm going to get ahead of myself a little bit. This is my game of the week to watch because I wanted to see how Forge could respond and try to go into this cup tie against TFC, the 905 QEW, whatever you want to call it, derby. Like, this is what they needed, and now Forge up 1-0. They're going to have a long game ahead of them. So
It's also 2 legs. I think that's important to point out. So,
and up 2-0. They just scored in the 14th minute.
Maybe that's why my group chat. Yep. Yo, I just got this group chat message. Yo, holy, that's crazy. I just got 2-0.
It is.
Damn.
And I mean, Forge, we can also talk about them. They're not having the season that they necessarily expected in the CPL. They're sitting 5th right now. I mean, it's a lot tighter of a league, don't get me wrong, and I'm not saying they're having a bad year, but they wanted to be at the top. And they're not. So maybe this is their opportunity to try to kickstart a huge run in the CPL as well by getting some momentum from the Canadian Championship.
It's crazy. I remember, I want to say it was Chouanier, but I can't remember. But they got interviewed early, like after maybe week 2 of the CPL. And a question was asked about, the Canadian Championship and just the season. And the way he answered the question, he's like, he really emphasized how important the Can Champ was for them this year. And it's just such Forge fashion that they're just going about and taking care of their business. Like, who knows what they spoke about at the beginning of the season, but if they're like, listen, we're going all in for the Canadian Championship, once we're done with that, then we'll worry about the CPL. I mean, right now, if that is how they're going about it, they're doing a good job of that. Forge is like a great white shark in the ocean. They could smell blood in the water. TFC is just swimming in the middle of the Atlantic, bleeding everywhere.
No, even better. TFC's not even bleeding everywhere. They probably have like a tiny little cut, and now Forge is going to take advantage of every little second.
I don't know. Recently, TFC feels like they're gushing blood. But Forge just attacks 15 minutes. And what I was going to say is we need to calm down because it's a 2-leg.
It is.
With 2 legs. You can't win the leg in the first leg. You can't win the matchup in the first leg, but you can lose it. So TFC is on the verge of losing it if they go down 3-0 now. So they kind of need to tie their bootstraps up. It's only 15 minutes in and it's 2-0. Wow, what a game. And TFC, I don't know if people are seeing this, they're playing their strongest lineup. It's not like Bernadeschi and Insigne are on the bench. Insigne's playing on Tim Hortons field turf.
Yeah.
Right now. A CFL stadium, Insigne's playing on that. Who would have thought? $15 million man.
Who'd have thought? Not me. And you also have to look. You say it's their best lineup. I think they subs 2 guys out of their normal 11. But you're right. This is the strong TFC lineup. This is not them starting TFC 2 players in a match. They know how big of a match this is. They know Forge is a beast when given the opportunity. They came out to play, and they're losing. So take that into consideration. On the flip side, Vancouver takes on Pacific later tonight. Does Vancouver have what it takes to three-peat, or is this Pacific's time to shine in the Can Champ?
I think this is a much more difficult matchup for the CPL side. I think Vancouver is still a much better side than TFC at the moment. And I don't think Pacific is as strong as Forges. They also have some key injuries. And then the whole debacle with the transfer window not opening up until July 18th, which has not allowed their winger that they signed, who I can't remember where he's from, but he's a Canadian. But they were hoping to have him in for this matchup, kind of reinforcements coming into the Can Champ.
Right.
Now, because the window isn't open, he's not cleared to play just yet. Is it still possible for Pacific to get it done? Yes, of course. In 90 minutes of football, anything can happen. But I think this is a much more difficult situation for a CPL side to come out on top.
I agree with you. But the way Vancouver's playing right now, nothing would shock me. If Pacific comes out tonight and wins the game, I wouldn't be shocked because Vancouver keeps shooting themselves in the foot right now. They just can't seem to find ways to get results. I mean, outside of a couple draws, maybe Pacific would take a draw in this match and go into Vancouver, put the pressure on, and say, hey, good luck. Right? Maybe that's what they're hoping for. I mean, not hoping for. They're hoping for a win, but you know what I mean? Like maybe that's what happens tonight and we see Vancouver go out too. I wouldn't be shocked either way. No matter what the result is tonight. I would not be shocked at all.
Definitely. And what Pacific has been struggling to do is score goals.
Yes.
I think if you have Pacific fans, they can't really see where goals are going to come from. Defensively, they've been great. Gazdov has been playing very well as well, and
when he's in the games after that scary incident that he ended up not playing a match. But yeah,
he's back in just as a defensive unit. They've done well. So yeah, if they can keep this game tight, even 1-0 isn't so bad. And then see how you go up against next week. But they need
next week. No. The next game's in August.
Really?
Next game's not till like August 20th, I'm pretty sure.
Well, I didn't know that. Sure. I mean, once I got knocked out of the tournament, I stopped looking at the schedule. But
that's fair.
I think, defensively.
Oh, I'm sorry, August 27th.
That's crazy. So lots of time. That's when the second leg is?
That's when the second leg is, yes. When the schedule came out, everyone was kind of pissed about it.
Interesting. Weird. Talk about system and needing improving. Maybe some more sensible decisions when it comes to scheduling.
Or maybe, spread out the first couple rounds because we had like 12 games in 8 days, it felt like, for some of these teams. But
it's such a long way apart. You got to be like reminded what the aggregate score is going into game 2.
We're going to. I'm going to have to look it up and tell you to remind you ahead of the next game.
So, yeah, there you go. Great opportunity for CPL clubs here. Forge right now doing the business. And I'll encourage what I said to Pacific. You can't win it in the first leg, but you could definitely lose it. So let's get things tight in the back, boys.
Yep, I agree. 100%. Nothing wrong with that. And we'll see how they come out and play from there. Let's move on, Niko. Twitter Watch. I don't really actually have anything for Twitter Watch in this one. Did you have something that kind of caught your eye on social media this week?
No. Just people, a lot of chit chat about the rumors from this Canadian men's national team and where they're going to be getting interest from and all that. What I would tell everyone is the window opens July 18th. A week or a few days before the window opens, that's when all the news starts going. So just keep refreshing Twitter and hopefully some Canadian players get some moves and can keep growing the standard of the game.
Yep, and speaking of players getting moves, shout out to Julia Grosso, now playing for the Chicago Red Star in the NWSL. Grosso? Yeah, I'm right there, right? I don't know why. I'm like, oh, that might not be right. Yeah, just made the transfer yesterday. Huge news. Congratulations, coming a little bit closer to home after a stint in Europe. That was obviously big news on the social media front. Niko, you want to go first for game of the week? Because I already kind of gave away mine, or do you want me to just do mine quickly?
Yours quickly.
Okay, well, we'll go mine quickly. And my game is currently happening, so it kind of defeats the purpose. But TFC versus Forge, because I think this is a very, very important match for both sides. Forge looking to capitalize on a little bit of a run of play that they've had and trying to really get momentum going into the second leg. Now they're up 2-0, so they've got a lot of momentum even in this match. TFC trying to find momentum because they have looked not great recently, and they got a lot of work to do if they want to get back in this one, and a lot of work to do if they want to figure it out in the MLS as well. I know they're somehow still sitting in the play-in spot, but they're not looking great right now. So that's my game of the week. Your game, Niko?
We got York United FC versus Cavs away at ATCO Field. a place that York has had some success, but is a very difficult place to play. Cavs is still trying to find their feet in the regular season this year and see if they could climb up that table. I think it's very much a 6-pointer, this matchup. York now sees himself in second place. Cavs could take 3 points essentially away from York, jump up. It could even condense the league even more as we've seen it get the last couple of weeks. So top to bottom, it is very tight, and no one is really out of it. So that's my game of the week. Two very exciting teams right now.
Yeah, I agree. It's an exciting time too for the CPL because there's a lot of big matches going on, lots of interesting results, and as you said, table getting tighter and tighter as every week goes by. Niko, go ahead. It looks like you have something you want to say.
I also think another aspect of what this Copa run has done is I think it's going to bring a lot more eyeballs onto the CPL. I think this is very much a coming out party for Canada. I know the World Cup was, but again, people forget in football very quick.
Yes.
It's just reminded everyone again, and the fact that our season is in the middle of it, because when the World Cup was going on, it was December, and our season was in the off season, so nothing was really to, oh, Canada Soccer, what league they go? They got a game going. I think the CPL is going to gain a lot of eyeballs for the second half of the season due to the Copa run. And I really hope the CPL is able to take advantage of that, whether it's from a business side, whether it's from bringing in more investors for expansion, whether it is for bringing in TV rights and media deals and broadcasting deals for the future, or whether it's just for selling players and players getting moves from the CPL. I think when the country had success like they did in a Copa, it could really springboard a lot more success for individuals and groups. So I hope that's the case, and
I think
people
we
are
all
aware.
I think we all hope that's the case because getting eyes on the product is what's going to help get money into the product. And by doing that, we're just going to help grow the national program even more and get us to the heights that we want to be at. We want to be in these tournaments doing what the national team did in this Copa. But we want to be doing that consistently and not in one off. So hopefully by getting more eyes on the CPL, by getting more eyes on League One, all of that combined can help us raise the product even more for Canadian players. So I agree with you 100%, Niko. That'll do it for us here. Oh, never mind. You got one more point. Go ahead.
And you know what? I'm not apologizing for saying this. The CPL community 2 weeks ago lost a member, Dylan Powley. And I wanted to say I was friends with him, and this is a guy that loved Canada soccer, was a great ambassador for the game. He played in the CPL for a few years, and then as soon as he was done playing, he got stuck into coaching. I believe he was also refereeing as well. It was an extremely tragic loss for the soccer community and just his friends and family, and really anyone that Dylan uh, touched the lives of. Really difficult moment for a lot of people. So I want to put out our thoughts towards his friends and family, especially. And something, stuff like this happens, and I think everyone's all nice and says, it's such a shame, and then life goes on, and people kind of forget. But with how young the CPL is, and I do think Dylan did play a big role in the small history that the CPL has. I think it's a great opportunity for the CPL to, I don't know what the right word is, commemorate Dylan's life and what he did and just represent who he was and how much he cared about Canada soccer, how much he cared about goalkeeping. He was trying to give his knowledge back and he started his own goalkeeper academy. I think it would be a very nice touch if they name the CPL Goalkeeper of the Year the Dylan Powley Award. I think that would be something that they can do, and that would be my idea to remember Dylan Powley's life. So I just want to put that out there. But again, our thoughts and prayers with Dylan Powley and everyone that he knew.
I couldn't have said it any better, Niko. Thank you so much for bringing that up. With him passing, it is a tragic event, and definitely our thoughts and prayers are with him and his friends and family. Um, Don't have a whole lot to add after that. So we're gonna end it there. Niko, always great chatting with you, man. It's been a couple weeks, and I'm glad we got the opportunity to talk about Canada's run at the Copa, and we got a lot more coming up with the MLS and CPL seasons in full swing. Canadian Championship. Will talk about the third place game next week and get ready for the Olympics as well for the women's side. All that coming up in the next couple weeks. Until next time, we thank you for listening, folks. We will see you then.